Hello and welcome to this edition of TZM Global Radio. I'm your host for today, Jim Phillips, or James Phillips, from the UK chapter of the Zeitgeist Movement and TZM Education. The opening for today's show is a track called Gandhi Mate Gandhi from a band called Enter Shikari. I think you'll probably agree with me that that opening sums up where we are at as a species on this planet right now and why it's clearly not acceptable. And the other reason for including that track on today's show is because today's show is going to feature an interview with the lead singer from Enter Shikari, Rou Reynolds, that was recorded earlier this week. Rou and the rest of the band are strong advocates of the Zeitgeist Movement and have helped us in the past by getting us into their gigs to hand out flyers to their fans and what have you regarding this train of thought. And obviously their fan base are going to be more open to receiving this sort of information because of the nature of the lyrics in Enter Shikari's music. And so it's a really great tool for the movement to be able to spread the train of thought to the low-hanging fruit, so to speak, the people who are actually going to be receptive to this information. So that interview will be included in the show a little later. But first of all, just to go through some movement news. Obviously, Z-Day is just around the corner on March the 16th. I hope you're all considering or have organised an event in your local area. Remember, it doesn't have to be in a great big lecture hall or theatre. It can just be a small local pub or bar or even in your home for your friends. Just anything to sort of bring across this train of thought to your local community. Here in the UK, the main event's going to be in London, although once again would encourage others to have their own events local to them if they can. But the event this year in London is going to be a little bit different to the Z-Days of the past. There's only going to be one speaker from the Zeitgeist Movement, myself, just to host the event. And then all the other speakers for the day are coming in from exterior organisations. Now, whilst these organisations may not recognise the root cause, if you will, or agree with all the premises of the Zeitgeist Movement and may in some ways be engaging in patchwork, that patchwork is a very important component to the transition, because the Zeitgeist Movement did not come up with maglev trains or other forms of sustainable technology or research into human behaviour or all of the other things that we talk about. Really, it's just there to join the dots into a new orientation, if you will, a new train of thought, towards a more sustainable social and planetary system of economics to meet human needs on a global scale. Now, are there organisations out there who are more likely to join these dots together so that the train of thought can take hold and this new economic system is therefore more likely to actually happen? Yes, there are loads, actually. And why would we, as a movement who seeks unity on a global scale and collaboration, say to these groups, well, you don't agree with all the premises of what we talk about, and therefore we'd prefer to ostracize you and just have a sort of church meeting, if you will, of just the Zeitgeist Movement members who will just talk amongst themselves? That's not an outward-looking movement. Don't get me wrong, I think it's great if you're holding an event day where it is just movement members talking and people are coming to our event day and listening to our train of thought, but I think it's also important to show that we are outward looking and that there are organisations that are willing to work with us and we're willing to work with them, and that we should have a seat at the table, if you will, of groups who recognise there's something very wrong in the world, seek a more collaborative system, seek a more sustainable economic system and a more sustainable economic practice. Therefore, it makes sense for us to be in league with these organisations, if you will, or having them talking at our events. And of course, there is another advantage with having an exterior organisation come to give a talk at a Zeitgeist Movement Day event, because when that event pops up on YouTube, then all the people who are interested in that exterior organisation are introduced to the Zeitgeist Movement and say, well, what's this Zeitgeist Movement thing all about then? And more people come to us, and more people from us go and find a place to work in something that is transitionary, that is moving towards the sort of model that we would like with their lives. So that's another bonus, a little bit of cross-pollination, if you will. Take, for example, Positive Money. Positive Money are a group that want to do away with the fractional reserve-based monetary system and replace it with one that is more orientated towards steady-state economics. Generally, that's what they talk about, as well as distributing the wealth more evenly amongst society. Do Positive Money think that we should just do away with money? No. They think that if money is used wisely as a tool, then it can work. That's their disposition. Do I agree with it? No. Does the Zeitgeist Movement agree with it? No. Does it matter for now? No, it doesn't. Because what's more likely? That the transition is going to happen straight from a fractional reserve-based monetary system into a resource-based economy? No. So would we want an economic system in place that makes it more likely for people to have the room and space to start to understand what it is we talk about, have the breathing space, if you will, to in their lives to take on board these ideas and seek a move towards the sort of economic system we're talking about? Yes. So, should we have Positive Money coming to Z-Day to give a talk on the importance of moving away from fractional reserve banking? Yes. Now, I have come up against a couple of criticisms for this move that myself and my co-organiser Chris are actually taking, because we recognise that these groups are dealing in patchwork as far as we can sort of see. But I think that it's better to be talking to these organisations and joining those dots than to just be off to the sides, because then all we become is a closed group that look like, at least from the outside, a cult. And that's what it looks like to people when you close your doors and say, if you don't agree with us, then fuck you. That makes you look like a cult. It makes you look like a religion, because you're not outward looking, you're inward looking. And that, as well as a great deal of procrastination and bickering amongst yourselves, can well easily lead to something as terrible as this next clip.
Right, now, item 4, attainment of world supremacy within the next 5 years. Francis, you've been doing some work on this?
Yeah, thank you, Reg. We're quite frankly siblings. I think 5 years is optimistic, unless we can smash the Roman Empire within the next 12 months.
12 months?
Yeah, 12 months. And let's face it, as empires go, this is the big one. So we've got to get up off our asses and stop just talking about it.
Yeah.
I agree. It's action that counts, not words, and we need action now.
Yeah, you're right. We could sit around here all day talking, passing resolutions, making clever speeches. It's not a shift. One Roman soldier.
So let's just stop gabbing on about it. It's completely pointless and it's getting us nowhere.
Right. I agree. This is a complete waste of time.
They've arrested Brian!
What?
They've dragged him off! They're going to crucify him!
Right. This calls for immediate discussion.
What?
Immediate.
Right. New motion?
Completely new motion. That there be immediate action.
Once the vote has been taken.
Well, obviously, once the vote's been taken, you can't act on a resolution till you've voted.
Hey, for God's sake, let's go now, please!
Right, in the light of fresh information from Sib and Judith.
Oh, not so fast, Reg.
Hey, for God's sake! It's perfectly simple. All you've got to do is to go out of that door now and try to stop the Romans nailing him up. It's happening, Reg! Something's actually happening, Reg! Can't you understand? Oh!
Yeah. Hello.
Another little ego trip from the feminists.
What?
Oh, sorry, Loretta. Read that back, would you?
Yes, so let's make sure we don't turn into that now, shall we? Actually, the top comment on the video for that on YouTube was, "This looks like another UN meeting then," which I thought was very amusing. So, back to Z-Day, and Z-Day London in particular. We have got some really exciting speakers lined up for the day. We've got someone from a group called One People, One Planet, who are seeking to pull together all the organisations that talk about unity, sustainability, generally people of a wise disposition, trying to bring them all to the table so they can work together. We've got someone coming and talking about legal fiction and strawman stuff to do with the difference between the legal system and the law system, because there is a difference. We've got someone coming from the Equality Trust over here who we have featured heavily in our materials in the past. We have got someone coming from non-violent communication, which is something I plan on doing a radio show about in the near future, because I think words and language in general are an incredibly important part of building more sustainable relationships, more sustainable social and human values in society. And so non-violent communication is an incredibly important part of that and well worth checking out. And we have Change the Future, which is an open sort of education platform for people to come together and put some pressure on the established system to change the education system to one that the people actually want, and that's more geared towards sustainable values in general. We've got the moneyless man, Mark Boyle. This is a man who decided to live a year of his life without money. I think he's still continuing to live without money, I'm not sure. But he basically thought, well, I've got to practice what I preach, and he just went off and lived without money. And he's very popular. He writes columns for The Guardian newspaper over here in the UK, and he's had a documentary a series done on him on the BBC as well. So that's quite that's a good speaker that we've landed for the day. And he also has a book out called The Moneyless Manifesto, and although I haven't read it yet, apparently one of the chapters is about a resource-based economic model. So that's good. So it's good to have him at the day. So the day in general is going to sort of pan out with the speakers. I'll start off the day. We've got the 25-frame exhibition on science and sustainability featuring the Venus Project as well. That's going to be outside in the lobby for people to have a look round at lunch before and after the event. And then we finish off the day with a Q&A, and then down the road to the local pub, and hopefully should have some music put on for us there as well. So it's shaping up to be a good day. So please do come along. If you want to get your tickets for that, if you type in Z-Day London 2013 into Google, then it should come up with the Event Tribe page. The tickets are something like £7.70 or something silly like that, because of the handling fees involved with the site that we're using online. If there's anybody out there who is proficient in filming, it's critical that we get this filmed to a high quality standard. The capacity for the venue is only 220, which is the smallest capacity yet for a Z-Day here. So it should be packed out, obviously. It's the only one we could get on our budget that we had, unfortunately. So it's even more critical that these lectures should survive and thrive online after the event and be cut together to a very high standard and edited well. So we do have a couple of people in the pipeline, but we would really like to be able to secure someone who can definitely do a very decent job on the filming for the day. So if that's you, then please do get in touch with me via the TZM Education website contact section, and hopefully we can sort something out. So I figured that I would leave the next section for the First Civilization audiobook series for the next radio show, as this one's already going to be long enough. So without further ado, here is the interview between myself and Rou Reynolds from Enter Shikari. I'm here with social commentator and general acrobat of the stage, Rou Reynolds, who is the lead singer for post-hardcore electronic mashup band Enter Shikari from the UK. Hi, Rou. Welcome to TZM Global Radio.
Hello, sir. Thank you for having me.
No, it's a pleasure. It's been a long time coming. But I just wanted to give the listeners a bit of a background to Enter Shikari, those who aren't familiar with them, as I'm sure Rou has probably done the rounds on these sorts of questions a few times, though I'm sure he'd probably do the next bit a bit differently. Enter Shikari formed in 2003 and are one of the, if not the most successful independent band to emanate from the heavy rock scene here in the UK. They were the first unsigned band to sell out London Astoria 2 nights in a row. And since then, they've gone from strength to strength, playing loads of sold-out shows across the world with the biggest rock and metal festivals there are going, and all the biggest bands, and done off all their own backs. And they're quite insane because they clock up about 250 shows a year. Have I got that right, Rou?
Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah. I mean, there's working hard, buddy, and then there's what you guys do, which is just another level.
Yeah, I often wonder, how we do it. There was that thing recently, the PRS Awards, where JLS won the hardest working band with 34 shows a year. We were just like, oh no.
Yeah, brilliant. That must have got you a few good laughs. 34 shows. God, we do that in a month.
Yeah, exactly.
Clocking up 2 a day. Brilliant. Have you ever done 2 shows in one day?
Yeah, we've done 3 in one day actually. Once we did a festival in Texas, Dallas, Texas, called South by Southwest Festival, and there were literally 3 venues in close vicinity, and our lovely agent managed to book all 3 of them on one day. God bless him. And so yeah, we were running around in the roaring heat of midday Texas, literally, amps on the backs, running down the streets for the next shows.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's an experience.
Did you get any sound checks?
Well, yeah, very, very brief, a quick 1, 2 down the mic, yeah, that works, go for it, sort of thing.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Do you ever burn out?
I guess, yeah. I mean, I suppose sleep is like the most important thing, like, especially for me. If I don't get my 7 hours, I'm a cranky one. It gets tough. But yeah, I guess you just kind of sleep when you can. And I think when you're out on stage and when you've got an audience shouting back your lyrics with such passion, that just if you're exhausted, if you're tired, or if you're fed up or bored or whatever, that just makes it all okay again. Yeah.
Yep, I hear you. I obviously used to be in a band myself, so I kind of have an experience of what that feeling is. Can't say I've had the feeling of playing in front of the sort of crowds that you guys have played in front of. That must be an amazing thing to play in front of that many people at some of these festivals that you've played.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that we never even dreamt of, really. When we started the band, it was just a hobby. It was just playing music, and then we get to play festivals, Reading and Leeds, and all sorts of festivals over Europe and even in Japan and stuff. So we're sort of constantly amazed, have to slap ourselves now and then just to know it's real.
But I think you guys have obviously worked incredibly hard for it, and that's the difference. You've definitely earned your position at the table, so to speak, of the rock scene, in my view. So
yeah, we actually only just realised that a few weeks back that we're coming up to 10 years now as a band. A decade, which just makes us feel incredibly old, but yeah, still loving it.
Yeah, it's like a marriage, isn't it, being in a band?
Yeah, very much so.
Would you agree with that?
With 3 members instead of 2. Well,
yeah.
4, yeah, including myself. So
yeah. I was watching some of your videos of you guys just stuck on a bus together for like 11 hours or something, and your bass player had built himself a little newspaper tent in the back of your van, like to keep himself entertained because all of his media devices were down.
Yeah, you'll be surprised what things happen to keep yourself from going absolutely mad when you're trapped in some sort of enclosed space for a whole day or something, which is a position that we find ourselves in a lot.
Yeah. But you guys seem quite tight together, you don't at least seem to have torn each other apart too many times.
Yeah, we all went to either the same primary school or secondary school together, so we've known each other for ages. It's got to that stage where it's just like your brothers now. You just kind of get on with it.
Yeah, that's good. And in fact, it's a wild cry from your early days. I only met you briefly at the early stages of Enter Shikari. And they were on a couple of occasions. Once when we put on, through our promotions company, we put on one of your first shows at Ultimate Solution, which was I don't know if you remember it, which was a heavy promotion scene in Amersham and Wickham.
Yeah, very much so, yeah.
In a scout hut.
That was it, yeah. Amazing gigs, great vibe, yeah. Remember it well.
It's a far cry from that. And the other time was when I did your sound, or your sound was being done rather, at Amersham and Wickham College in front of 30 people. and I came in there and I thought, and this was the first time I'd actually seen you guys live, and I thought, oh, this band can handle themselves, they're good, man. And I was like, but their sounds bites. So I sort of went up to the desk and was like, I think you need to just tweak this and do that, and just I changed a few things and stuff, so I can claim that I've done your sound once. Although I don't think you knew it, and and funny thing, and I don't know if I've told you this, but the first time I met you, I came up and I think you were a bit fed up because you just played a show to like hardly, not many people in some sort of college, and I was like, hi, and you're like, yes, it's all good, or something, but you did look slightly disappointed, but
oh no, really?
But it could have been something completely different. No, but it was good. I got your CD that night and played it in the car on the way home, and I was most pleased. So it was all good.
Awesome.
Cool. So yeah, in the spirit and a tip of the hat to Neil Kiernan from V Radio, the first question that I wanted to ask you was, what got you started thinking outside the box in general about the world in which you live, Rou?
No idea. I guess it was probably a sequence of things. I think we came into a lot of trouble very early on. In the first stages of the band, 2003, 2004, there was an incredible kind of forceful nature of our local council that they seemed to be trying to stunt or just completely exterminate any sort of youth culture. So they'd be closing down, any youth centres. They'd make it really hard to put on independent gigs. It turned out that the only venue that still really works now in St Albans is 18 plus. So the scene has been, it's completely just been dilapidated basically now. So yeah, I think those early days of struggling against the scene and putting on our own shows, I think that immediately gave us a kind of disrespect for authority, because there was no reason for it. You would have thought the best thing to do would be getting kids off the street, getting them to sort of positive places where they can interact, build communities and stuff, and it was the complete opposite. They were most unhelpful. So yeah, I think that gave us an immediate sort of disrespect for authority, which then kind of elevated, I guess, as we became more interested in talking about these things in our music. I guess it then turned to a more of a global scale. But yeah, other than that, it's hard to tell. We all come from sort of reasonable middle class backgrounds. I guess music as well. The music that we listened to growing up, we were into the punk scene, the hardcore scene, and we were very lucky to, as I say, back then, to have quite a thriving scene before it got completely stunted by the local councils. So a lot of the bands, were singing about the same sort of subjects that we now frequent.
Yeah, well, I think my band were in a very similar vein in a lot of ways, singing about those sorts of things and actually running our own promotions company, for for teenagers basically to come and listen to the music they wanted to listen to. So I can certainly sympathise with that. And we had our own run-ins with the council, so I know exactly what you're talking about. In fact, we had them. They had to come and do a noise test once, and I remember this. And they went over to where they needed to test the noise from, and they ended up coming back and saying, "Could you start?" And it's like, well, we've been doing it for 20 minutes. So it wasn't even that the people really had a problem. They were just busybodies who didn't like a load of kids dressing up in like I don't know, gothic clothing and coming and watching some heavy bands. It was just a bunch of busybodies, and you thought, have you got nothing better to do with your lives, than this? And the funny thing is, just echoing what you said earlier, is about people who say, it's terrible, these kids are roaming the streets, we've got to give them something to do. And then you say, okay, well, we'll put on some music for them. What? No, heavy stuff? No. Or it's like, well, then they're going to chill out on your front wall, aren't they? Drinking cider.
Yeah. It's the ignorance, those kind of the stereotypes that they forge in their head, where the music immediately means that, the kids are going to be disrespectful, little hooligans or whatever. Ignorance is terrible. We once had a show at the we're from St Albans, and there's a venue there, as I'm sure you know, the Alban Arena. It's called an arena. It's not an arena. It's about maybe 900 capacity or something. So it's a sizable venue. We had a headline show there. It was a sort of a homecoming as we were starting to get sort of slightly bigger around the UK and Europe. And at the show, they insisted that for the show to go ahead, we would have to pay for... I mean, obviously, the venue supplied their own security. It was absolutely legit. But they forced us to pay for an extra, I think it was 10 plainclothes police officers to come to the show and be sort of in amongst the crowd, and we'd never heard anything so ridiculous in our lives.
That's amazing. It's funny that the sort of projections that people see, because you can see where it comes from, and if you have no understanding of the scene and you see a mosh pit kicking off, then you do think, God, these people are just beating the hell out of each other. And if you've never actually been in one, then it's really easy to sort of not understand how it works. The funny thing I found about like mosh pits and things like that, where people are pushing and shoving and jumping and all that sort of thing, is that there's this unwritten law in there. There's certain things you just don't do, in that pit. And one of them is that, like, wanton violence, is that I don't ever remember, of all the gigs I ever played, I don't remember seeing one fight in that scene, the heavy scene, like at a venue. I mean, I'm sure you've probably seen one yourself or something like that by now, of all the places you've been to, but at least in my experience, it was a really good scene of people, because they seem to almost sort of there's a camaraderie there,
Definitely. I think that's quite important, because that's what a scene does build up. It builds up sort of a respect for your fellow sort of music fans, and everyone feels involved, everyone feels part of something positive. I think that's really important. I mean, as well at our shows, we try and do the sort of the more constructive things that the crowds can do. Like we've done a thing for pretty much since our first gig, where we get the crowd to try and build a human pyramid, which is great fun. And it's just little things like that, getting people to interact. Sometimes you have people who've travelled from all sorts of corners of the country to come to this show, and then the next thing they know, they'll be on all fours on the ground at the bottom of a human pyramid. It's amazing to watch it from stage as well. Do you know the amount of people who've come away from a Shikari show and ended up paying money for chiropractors? Hopefully not.
They'll be sending you the bill soon, Rou, if you're not careful, mate. So, when do you remember becoming interested in music for the first time?
Well, my dad was actually a DJ, and he used to play Northern Soul and Motown and sort of all 60s stuff like that. So that's what I was brought up on, really. So very melodic music, and I loved it. There's lots of home videos of me bopping about as a little kid to Motown and stuff like that. So that was probably my earliest musical influence. I was lucky enough as well to have a very sort of musical uncle, and he introduced me to sort of Beatles and Britpop and Prodigy and stuff like that, and obviously that each one of them opened my mind a further stage to all sorts of other avenues of music. So yeah, but I was into music from quite an early age. I think the first instrument I started learning when I was about 8 was the trumpet as well. So yeah, it's all sorts, I guess.
So none of those videos of you bopping about to like early Motown have made their way onto the Enter Shikari site, Rou. That's odd.
No, not yet. I'm vehemently blocking that from happening ever.
I'll have a word with the rest of your band, and we'll see what we can perpetrate on you.
Yeah.
No. So, what is your first instrument, by the way? What's the first? I mean, apart from trumpet, I know you started there, but I've seen you play a guitar before.
Yeah, I started learning guitar when I was about 12, and that was my first sort of bands that I was in. I was guitarist, yeah, and then moved on to the more electronic side of things, keyboards and stuff, at the very beginning of Enter Shikari.
How did that sort of come about? You're interested in doing electronica? Was it through your influences via the Prodigy and things like that?
Yeah, I think so. Certainly to start with. Very lucky to be living just outside London, so I could always pop in and keep up to date with the many dance scenes that were vibrant and still are throughout London. Was lucky enough to watch dubstep grow from those very early seeds, and obviously massive house scenes and drum and bass. So yeah, it all kind of crept in. One thing that always sort of confused me growing up is that sort of identity people have with music, which I think is fine, but it becomes a bit too much when people, will call themselves a metalhead and like only listen to metal, or they'll call themselves a raver and only listen to that sort of music, and everything else is just unlistenable. I spit on that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I was quite lucky, I guess, again, to have a group of friends that listen to all sorts of music, and we never really thought that way about ourselves or identified with just one sort of piece of music or type of music in particular.
What school system did you go to? Did you just go to state school?
Yeah.
I heard somewhere that you guys went to Rudolf Steiner, or one of you did, or something, but could just be vicious lies.
I don't know that school.
Sorry?
I don't even know that school.
Oh, okay. Well, it's vicious lies then.
Some of us went to Verlam, some of us went to Sandringham, both St Albans state schools. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Although we used to clean the local boys' school, the private school. That was our first job. It was actually all 4 of us in the band after school would go there, clean a couple of classrooms each day, and then go to band practice. That was our schedule.
So, did you? So, I mean, that must have been. You say you've been in a band for 10 years, but you've known each other quite a lot longer than that, then.
Yeah. I knew Rob and Chris, our drummer and bassist, from primary school, and then Rob met Rory, our guitarist, in secondary school. Introduced him to us. Yeah. So it's quite a while.
So do you still come up with some of the band's stuff on your guitar then? Do you sort of have an input on that side of things, or do you just get left to your lyrics and...
I either write on the guitar or piano or something like that, and sort of take a backbone or skeleton of a song to the guys, and then we'll flesh it out all together.
Do you start by writing on your computer on computer writing software like Cubase or something?
Yeah, pretty much. The very sort of embryonic stages will be me just whistling or humming into my phone when an idea hits me. But
Yep, I've got a fair few of them on my phone as well, buddy. So don't worry, you're not alone. And they are hideously embarrassing, aren't they?
Yeah, that's it. Every time I plug my phone in and iTunes just starts updating automatically and starts playing my little my audio notes. It's just me going bum bum bum. It's just like, oh no.
Yeah.
But then once it gets into Logic, it becomes something that sounds reasonably like a song at some point, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. With regards to sort of the technological side of your music as well, do you think that your appreciation for technology has come through the use of it to write music? And obviously the approach to a resource-based economy is one of using technology wisely, because I know that it helped me to appreciate the Venus Project a whole lot more by knowing the sorts of problems it can solve through the experience of writing music with technology involved in it, and how that enables you to open your musical perspective and horizons by the use of technology in music. It's a bit of an odd question, but
yeah, no, I know what you mean. I think that was probably one of the things, a decade or two ago, that kept people in one avenue of music, or one type of genre, was that will be all that they know, or that's the only instrumentation that they had. So I think having a computer in front of you with, a whole orchestra on it, and you can just create a song, in next to no time with some of the best samples, it just completely opens up your palette, and you can create all sorts of music, all sorts of sounds, genres, textures. Yeah, so it's incredible.
Yeah, I've always found that as well, and more so when we were in a band doing that sort of thing. It was the case of, well, why should we be limited to just the four of us? I can put any instrument I want in this music. Whereas, I think bands of yesteryear, obviously they're fantastic and did a fantastic job with what they had, but sometimes there is a limitation of, there's the three of you playing these instruments, whereas with technology, you can have any instrument right at your fingertips. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I know that it helped me when technology comes into your life like that and helps something you're passionate about, like music. I think it helps you appreciate it a little bit more. Speaking of technology in music as well, whilst we're on that topic, how has the technology involved in the internet affected the music scene? Is it harder to make any debt slips out of it now? Or money, as it's otherwise known?
I think we kind of dodged that bullet, because unless you were saying Metallica and you got used to this way of living created by so much money flooding in through selling your music, and then suddenly it got taken away as people started to download it illegally, I guess you'd be pissed if that was you. But for us, it was something we did anyway. We were constantly giving out our music for free, or giving out CDs. And by the time we brought out our first album, the music industry was starting to change and see that progression into more people just downloading illegally. So yeah, that never mattered much to us. I've always felt slightly queasy, I suppose, anyway, at just limiting this. It's like limiting art, just saying, you can buy it if you have enough purchasing power, or if you have enough money. It's just, I've always felt a bit strange about creating something and then limiting it like that. So
it's not in the spirit of creativity either, is it? When you create something, you just have that excited feeling that you just want to get it out into the world and let other people hear it. So
yeah, exactly. We want as many people to hear it as possible, regardless of anything, So really, bands nowadays, especially bands like us, and not particularly mainstream bands, with the money you make that keeps you going is just from touring, just ticket sales. So yeah, even venues are taking sort of 25% of merch and things like that. So it's tough, but
But yeah, it's keeping food in your belly and the wheels on the road. Yeah. Yeah,
definitely.
Well, that's not too bad then. So, what would be the best and worst parts of being in a touring band?
I guess the worst is easy. It's just being away from home. Your family, your loved ones for so long. A lot of people think that it is this picturesque career of, you know, just traveling around the world, seeing the world, but most of what you see is, as I was saying earlier, just an enclosed transportation device, whether it's a bus or a train or a plane. It's just, yeah, you, apart from the venue and perhaps a hotel if you can afford it, that's pretty much all you do see. But yeah, the best parts are just being able to get to places that you would never think you would have gone to, even if you can't stick around and do the tourist thing. It's amazing meeting the people at the shows, and people that you realise have pretty much identical hopes and dreams as you do, and they live halfway across the world to you. It's quite astonishing. So yeah, just seeing those people singing the lyrics, seeing the passion and the striving and the hoping for the similar things. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, and that must really help to appreciate what your lyrics are about and what you guys are talking about in your music, by seeing these people and seeing that we really are one, you know, people, and seeing the similarities. Yeah,
it definitely breaks down. Not that I had any sort of preconceived notions about any of the divisive things that we have in society. I didn't particularly believe any of them, but it does completely eradicate all of them when you take away the divisive nature of capitalism. You take away creed and class and race, and it's just people with the same hopes, the same needs, and the same wants, just listening to music and having a good time. Yeah, enjoying life and being sort of peaceful people. Yeah. So,
do you get much time to read and watch documentaries on the road, then stuck in that transportation device of yours?
Very much so. Yeah, that's a lot of what we do, really. I guess I'm limited at the moment by the shocking time of my MacBook's battery. It seems to have degraded itself now a year after I've bought it, and it's already up to maybe get a few hours out of the battery, and then it's straight back to zero. Yes.
You'll have to stick a solar panel on your van roof, mate.
Yeah, that's it.
Plug it up. So, what would you say was the best and worst moment of the Enter Shikari adventure so far? What would be like? It's hard to pick a best moment. I understand, but is there a moment that stands out as being just really amazing?
I guess the obvious things, like walking out on stage when we do the few times that we do main stages at festivals. You can never sort of prepare yourself for that kind of just gasp of air you take in when you walk out and see that many people. It's quite incredible. But then some of the more sort of individual or personal things, like just speaking to people. Perhaps a show. I remember when there was a show in America where a young lady I was speaking to for a while, telling me about how she's gone off to join the Peace Corps, and it was basically her values had been completely changed by our music and other bands as well that come from a similar sort of angle. Just think things like that, knowing that you can have an impact on people's lives, and I guess again, like other people's sort of personal tales of the music helping them through perhaps a particular horrible bit of their life or something. It's always it's really great to know that you can have a helpful impact in people's lives.
That's amazing, really is, and it brings me nicely onto this question actually. So well, I mean, I suppose you've kind of answered it, but what has the reaction been from your fans to your very vocal advocacy of the resource-based economy? Are there any interesting accounts and stories other than the one you just described?
Well, there's. It's great when perhaps we're hanging out after a show or something, or the merch, and people will be saying, it was because of us. They either got into the movement or even just started thinking a bit more. It's just getting those first boulders moving, getting the snowball in motion, so they can start really thinking outside of their sort of education or whatever else. But yeah, no, it's great.
Have you had any negative reactions?
What, specifically towards the avocation of the?
Yeah, from fans that come up and called you crazy utopians. Yeah,
exactly. The classics. I mean, there's even exactly that line of you're oh god, I can't even remember it now. My own lyrics in Gandhi Mate Gandhi, or as you're a utopianist. Oh, this is embarrassing. Can't even remember it. If I was singing it, I'd be fine. It just sort of flows out, It's just
that's amazing. I've seen you do this live. Hang on, this is hilarious because I've seen you do this live in front of like 2,000 people, and now you're in front of just me, and you've gone all shy, haven't you? You've got all embarrassed. You can't do your words. No,
I've got it. It's you're a communist. You're a fucking utopianist. Is the line, and that's just a classic. We've had that sort of thing. Shouted us. I mean, the classic one as well is just people calling us a political band, which is kind of, I guess, just wrong by definition straight away. Like, people just assume we're, this crazy leftist band with their crazy liberal ideas and liberal agenda. I mean, whereas I agree, in most subjects, the left is definitely the more sort of logical way of looking at things, but yeah, we're very much not interested in politics. Much more interested in people, in our biosphere, and not so much. Well, certainly not party politics, anyway.
No, well, it's a very similar thing with me and TZM Education, which I sort of go into schools and talk to kids about the resource-based economy, and just a couple of times. There's been, well, we might not let you in with, your what you're talking about because it's political, and I'm always like, no, it's not political. It's a technical design, and you do but it's people having to project prior sort of associative memory into new experience to make sense of it. You couldn't possibly think that there's an idea outside of politics because that's your frame of reference, And that's the struggle for people. But I think the use of those words when I've listened to them in that particular song you're talking about is really good because you're disarming. That's all you're doing, aren't you? Yeah. If someone comes up and goes, well, I would call you a communist and a utopianist, only you said that in one of your songs. So why can't I call you one of them again? Because do you know what I mean? It's quite disarming to actually put that in there because it's almost like I know what your objection is going to be before I even talk to you about this. So let's just get it out of the way, shall we?
Yeah, it's just got to get there first.
Yeah, which is really good. So where did you actually and how did you hear about the Zeitgeist movement? How did you come in contact with it?
I literally just saw the first movie. God, I can't even remember when. It must have been a year or so after it came out. I don't know. I remember watching it and the usual reaction of just not being able to sleep that night. My whole world had completely changed. And then didn't really start getting, or at least finding the time to get more sort of properly into the movement and the avocation of the value change until perhaps I'd had a few more triggers from sort of outside the movement. Like I started reading a lot of I guess a lot of philosophy and poetry. Started getting perhaps a bit more into science. It was interesting. I never liked science at school, but as soon as I left school and sort of started finding out things by myself and researching things by myself, I became a lot more interested and intrigued with it. I think it was people like everyone from politicians or ex-politicians like Tony Benn to philosophers, like Bertrand Russell. I think he was the first person that really introduced, or even the phrase like reorientation of values and things like that came from him, I believe. So yeah, it's things like that made me remember the first movie, and then I think that was about the time the second movie was coming out, and really started to get into it then.
And are all the other bands sort of, I mean, they must be right 100% behind your lyrics, I presume, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, they're very much sort of intrigued by similar things and follow that sort of logical thought process, which I guess would bring anyone onto the same sort of brainwaves and ideas.
How have you found it being a band? It's sometimes quite ballsy, I suppose, to put your head above the parapet, out completely outside the box, and actually say these things, because then you are open to certain sorts of attacks, I suppose, like, well, we don't want a monetary, we want to move away from a monetary economy, and they're like, well, how much you selling your t-shirts for then?
Oh, yeah.
Or do you know what I mean? You know what I mean? Yeah, that sort of thing. Like, do you think that's the reason, like, a lot of more bands haven't really come out in very vocal advocacy of this direction? Because there's some supporters, I presume, amongst bands out there, but you seem to be very at the forefront of, you don't mind wearing the Zeitgeist Movement label on your shirt, so to speak. Do you know what I mean? You don't mind putting it up front.
I think there's still perhaps just a lack of awareness of it. So many bands just get into the music scene and just want to make music that sounds like their favourite band, and if their favourite band isn't speaking about those things, they're not going to be introduced to them, really. If they're not in the right sort of social circles, they'll be continuing to sing about, either meeting a girl at the club or just something else as just mind-numbing as that. I think the more bands, I think there's a lot of movement in the hip-hop scene, the UK hip-hop scene especially, that we find that sort of quite influential. But certainly in the punk scene, it's very disheartening to see, there's still this, the kind of glamorization of greed that you see in a lot of, mainstream pop and hip-hop, especially from the US. There's that, like, the glorification of just like violence and that sort of machoism that you get a lot from metal and punk. So it's very sad that, because punk, to me, it's a state of mind. It's supposed to sort of unsettle people. It's supposed to intrigue people. It's supposed to sort of get across new progressive ways of thinking. So yeah, we do find it quite sad sometimes. We feel like we're these sort of lone, I don't know, like custodians or guardians or something, just like with a bit of help in our music scene, definitely.
So how effective have you found the band as a medium to get across the train of thought, and what impact do you feel art and music can have towards the transition from this system into a resource-based economy? Well,
I guess, first of all, it can do a great deal just for awareness. We know that through experience. As I said before, the amount of people that were completely unaware of either the movement or another sort of train of thought, or something perhaps more specific, like environmentalism or some sort of other type of activism, and just to be able to introduce them down those avenues. Because when you kind of step back from the world, that you've got this big sort of, it's just this big interactive persuasion ball. Everyone's shouting as loud as they can, and little bands and little movements like us, we've got to, we're pitching against these, everything from sort of corporate advertising, religion, and then the government's using like class and race and creed as well to sort of divide us. So everything out there is just divide. And so I think the more sort of bands and the more movements that there are that remind us, that we are actually, in fact, all one species, and remind us of where we came from, and hopefully where a more sort of sustainable and progressive direction, the better.
Yep. I couldn't agree more. So, and there seems to be, because I've been doing my homework on your albums and stuff this week, just giving them a listen and trying not to crash my car as I sort of mosh out. But I only do it in the slow lane of the motorway.
Okay.
You know, that's my rule. I'm a safety guy, you know. So, but yeah, as I've been listening through to them, I've been listening to your lyrics and stuff, and there seems to be a real progression in them. And in my personal opinion, although I really do like all your stuff, I think there's also been a progression in your music writing. I like your new album most out of all of them.
Me too.
But I mean, there seems to have been a real progression in your lyric writing towards a more outward and social standpoint. Was there a backlash from your fan base to the changes made in your style and sort of lyrical direction?
I think there was after the first album going into the second, because a lot of the stuff on the first album, even though, you know, at the end of the day we are approaching the same ideas, the first album was kind of shrouded in metaphor, and it was a lot more artistic, and there were also just, you know, songs that were just about literally gibberish. You know, it was more using language as an instrument, and just for the way it sounded, you know, phonetically. And then for the second album, I guess we realised that where we were and how far we'd come as a band, and we definitely felt a sort of a burning sense of responsibility coming in. So we wanted to use that, and we wanted to be a bit more frank and direct with people. We wanted to create just something that where people could perhaps become connected to, and perhaps sort of start a community where it was logic and reason over anything else.
Yeah, that definitely comes through, and I think it must take quite a lot of courage, really, I suppose, when you've done the first album, to sort of say, just to be true to yourself and say, well, this is the album we want to do, and we do this one, and you know, that's how we roll. Because when you've got the ball rolling on a first album like you did, and hit sort of that vein of success, that rich vein, then it must be tempting to sort of put out one that you just know is going to sort of secure that position. But I think I think musically and lyrically we were just like, right, we're not going to just put out the same album again. Like we were very sort of adamant that we wanted to be a band that could venture down all sorts of musical avenues, you know, because we assimilate all sorts of ideas and musical genres into our music, and we didn't want to ever find ourselves in a position where we'd have to be playing the same sort of sounds, and that would, I guess, eventually just bore us. And you've got to keep the passion in the band, otherwise, you know, it's just not sincere as music and as art. Yeah, absolutely. So a massive thanks for the backstage pass to your London show and to Leeds Festival last year. Me and Ben McLeish came along to Leeds, as you remember.
It's really good to see you guys.
Yeah, thanks. Really great to be there, and it was good to meet you guys and to see what you play, obviously on a muddy field. So see you jump around a stage. Before I move on to this question, I sort of alluded to it at the beginning, guys. If you want to sort of see some pretty impressive sort of acrobatics, then you need to watch this man I'm interviewing at the moment leap around a stage. It's quite impressive. I think I don't know, maybe there's some bonobo in him or something.
I don't know, I think acrobatics sort of kind of falsely intellectualizes it. I think it's just me just running around like a headless chicken on stage, really. Yeah.
Well, what I'm really alluding to is we went to watch Enter Shikari in London, and Rou thought it would be quite a good idea to sort of try and swing from the lighting rig from one end of the venue to the other, pretty much, having his lead towed behind him by some poor roadie. Poor unsuspecting roadie. No, not unsuspecting, because he does it very often, but It's quite an impressive. It's a hugely impressive live show, actually, Enter Shikari, and I would strongly recommend these boys. If they're coming to your town, you must go and see them. They're so impressive live. And I wanted to ask you about these these particular acrobatic antics. What's your worst injury that you received?
That's a tough one. Yeah. The most, or at least the one that looked the worst, the most visually outrageous one was in Australia. Rory, our guitarist, managed to catch me on the back of the head with his guitar, and this isn't too infrequent when it's his headstock. So for anyone that isn't a guitarist, the end of the guitar, the sort of light end, where the left hand is going up and down the fretboard. But on this occasion, he was actually swinging his guitar around his head by the neck. So he actually caught me with the body of the guitar. Ooh. So yeah, that kind of pretty much knocked me for 6.
Oh, did that knock you out? Like that. Did that knock you out?
I can't. I think so. I can't really remember.
Did you get back up and sing? It certainly
went very dizzy, and there was a lot of blood. But
did you get back up and sing after that?
Well, yeah, I remember eventually getting up, and our stage hands were just kind of basically covering my head in. I think first of all, one of our techs just took his t-shirt off and just ripped it and just basically put it around my head, a quick makeshift bandage, and sort of pushed me back on.
That's amazing. We haven't lugged all your stuff into this venue for you to just get a head injury and give up.
Exactly.
Get back on there and scream.
Just a knock, mate. Yeah, go on with it.
I love it. It's not even like you're going back on there and singing like, I don't know, some nice dinner jazz or something, is it? You've got to go back on there and scream with blood pouring out your face.
Yeah.
Oh, these wonderful, wonderful stories of a rock and roll band, ladies and gentlemen. I remember we did an album launch show, and John McGrath, our bass player, went to the side of the stage before, like, about the third song, puked up and just came back on and carried on playing. It was just like,
wow.
Yeah, I was like, I only found out at the end. I was like, "Blimey, that's impressive." But I think getting smashed over the head with a guitar, with the heavy end of a guitar, probably beats that. To be perfectly fair, so kudos to you for getting back up and carrying on. So basically, yeah, we went to these gigs with we went to the Leeds Festival, and we handed out a lot of leaflets there. Incidentally, guys, great move to do is to go to a festival. You know, people are happy, they're open, they're enjoying the music. There are probably bands singing about coming together, you know, or something like that, something people orientated usually. And it's a really great place to go to sort of meet like-minded people and give out flyers. It was really useful. It was one of the most useful things I've ever done, actually. So and then the same at the London show we went to, where we were handing them out on the way in to people at your show, Rou. So you stated on the Movements Forum before that you were happy to have TZM members come to your shows and do a stall or hand out leaflets, and potentially maybe get them in for free. I don't.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, is that still an offer? And if not, don't feel obliged, because I can easily just cut this bit from the tape.
No, it's well, we've got what have we got? This April we have a sort of smaller venue tour in the UK. It's kind of a Back to the Roots tour, and we're getting out to some towns I've even actually never heard of in the UK. So that's going to be really interesting. So yeah, anyone that would be able to come down and sort of hand out flyers, perhaps speak to people, or set up some sort of stall. It's worked really well in the past. We've done it in America and throughout Europe as well. A lot of the people that come to our shows are really sort of open-minded and either into some kind of activism anyway. So I think it's a great way to get more people involved and intrigued.
So obviously, to anyone out there listening to this, you can go and find out where Enter Shikari are playing by just going to their website, which is
www.entershikari.com.
So yeah, you can go there and have a look. And how should they go about getting in touch with you to come and do the stalls or the leaflets, Rou? Should they get in touch with you?
Yeah, or, I mean, just the email that we all check is just info@entershikari.com.
Right.
Yeah, and if they just perhaps put the Zeitgeist Movement in the title.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll make sure we get back to them.
That's brilliant, really, really good. And if you boys ever need an influx of flyers as well, like because obviously I suppose every gig you play there won't be a Zeitgeist Movement member who will be able to come along and run a stall at one of your shows. So I don't know if you're interested in carrying even more luggage around with you on the road. but if you do ever want some leaflets or anything, then just let me know, and I'm sure I'll be able to get you some so that you can just take some around on the road and maybe hand them out to people.
Definitely, yeah, that would be great.
Brilliant. Okay, so tell us about now. I don't know if I didn't check this out, but I don't know if you still run a clothing label, Rou, called Step Up Clothing. Is that still going? Yeah.
I mean, it's only in the last year or two that it's properly sort of got together and started. It's stepuphq.com. It's fair trade, organic, and carbon neutral clothing. And then each design resembles or represents a particular cause. Be it environmentalism or sort of anti-war or anything like that. And then 50% of the profits from each respective design go to the respective causes. It's just a nice little project on the side, really.
That's brilliant. That's really good. And I've seen on some of your videos you guys doing some charity work whilst out on the road as well, digging holes.
Yeah, that's a one we did in America. I remember was we did a tour called Warped Tour, which is just the real sort of proper punk tour out there. Covers the whole of the States in the space of about 2.5 months. And there are a few days where they called them sort of community days, where I think there was one we did, I guess is the one you're alluding to, which was in Baltimore, where we basically helped laid the foundation for sort of an extension to a school that they've been wanting to get the money for ages, but couldn't really get it because their local community was just couldn't find the means, basically. So yeah, it was great. A few of the bands from the tour, we all came down and got nice and sweaty digging up paving stone for a whole day. Yeah, it was great.
Nice, as if it wasn't enough to jump around on a stage and play like punk music.
Yeah, well, that's the only exercise we get. So
yeah.
Every other time we're sitting in the bus or whatever. So you got to make the most of it.
So, what are I mean, is there any backlash? I mean, the punk scene can be, I suppose, quite narrow in some regards. Has there been a backlash against you because you guys really push the boundaries with your technology, man? You know, is there some sort of are there some bands who are like, oh, they use arpeggios, and synthesizers? This isn't punk.
Yeah, there's always going to be the sort of purists, I suppose. That they feel very connected to their music. It's very much theirs. They feel sort of ownership of it, and anyone that sort of tries to make it malleable in any way that they don't like, then they'll be onto you like vultures, definitely.
I remember a time when we were playing with because I played in a digital kit, like an electronic kit live that used to change with MIDI changes and things. Like I played to a click and the drum kits would change. So my argument was guitarists have got like this pedal where they can have delay and distortion and flange, and they can change their guitar into whatever they want. I'm stuck with the same frickin' snare drum the whole bloody show.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like, I'm not doing it. So I stamped my feet around like a little kid and got myself a digital kit, and we used to run that in the setup to sort of change kits. And we were back in a band, and this guy was a death metal drummer, and he turned up late, and so he was a bit stressed anyway. And my kit was in front of the stage, and I was sort of like just tonking around, and this guy basically, like his bass player, like who had all his effects pedals out in front of him, sort of turned around to his drummer who was getting ready and goes, "Oh, you should get yourself one of those things," pointing at my kit. And this guy went into the biggest rant you could have possibly imagined, this most vitriolic rant about like drum. "Oh, I wouldn't get myself one of those toy fucking drum kits, you know, and shit, and like you know, they're not real drums and things." And once he'd finished his rant, and everybody was kind of looking at him a bit funny and looking at me like thinking, this guy's gone off on one, I kind of like got up, looked on the stage, looked at his bass player's like effects pedals, and looked at his guitarist's effects pedals, and just said to him, "Well, once they said that about guitars, but thank fuck they were wrong."
Yeah, it's so silly when you think about it. I mean, even just amplifying the guitar, you know, he should then equally have a problem with that, because I don't know.
Yeah, no, you
stop. You know,
people backlashed against when Bob Dylan plugged in an electric.
Yeah,
they did. They didn't. I don't like Bob Dylan going electric.
Well,
you know, but I think it's cool. And nobody who ever pushed anything forward did it without a little bit of lack of comfort and jumping outside the box and prepared to take a little criticism for it. So I think it's kind of, when you keep that in the back of your mind, it just doesn't really matter the sort of people, the purists, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the old classic. You know, you're never going to please anyone. You certainly shouldn't be setting out to do that anyway.
Yep, absolutely. So, what are the plans for the band for the rest of the year then, Rou?
We have, as I was saying, we've got we've got a US tour first, which we're heading off in about 2 weeks. And then we have the UK, quite an extensive UK tour throughout April and May. And then after that, we're just doing a few festivals around Europe, and that's kind of our album campaign done. It's back into the studio after that.
And you mentioned to me that you were doing a couple of tracks at the moment to sort of keep people tied over. Is that right?
Yeah, we're going into the studio on Saturday. And that'll be to do 3 tracks, which will sort of staggeredly release throughout this year.
And do you do a lot of your writing on the road as well, with your sort of computer that doesn't really stay on for a lot of the time? That's obviously another sort of great advantage of having a technology. You can kind of pick up the computer, and as long as you've got some form of electricity at some point when the battery runs out, you can literally create the most grand music in a shed, if you like, or in a dingy van. It's definitely doable. Well, that sounds great. Have you got any other final comments or message to members of the movement out there that you'd want to convey or mention anything?
So no, really. Yeah, I mean, obviously, just thank you to all the support that we have been given, and just a general just respect and big up to everyone, you know, playing their part and doing what they do. It's definitely such a friendly and helpful and involved movement. It's great to be part of it. So yeah, just keep on trucking.
Brilliant. Well, yeah, mate, it's been great to talk to you. Thanks so much for coming on. We're going to close out the show today and this interview with I think it's the last track on your third album. Is that right, Rou? Constellations. Correct. I'm put down all of my manly bravado right here, and probably embarrass Rou as well, but I'd be lying if I said a tear didn't come to my eye when I first heard this song. It's one of my favourite tracks from last year, and I'm not just saying that like some bloody radio disc jockey, you know, or like disingenuously or in any way, shape or form, or to do any form of arse kissing. It really, really is a fantastic, wonderful song, and the lyrics, I think, speak volumes about the transition that we need to make as a species now on this planet. So thank you for writing it, Rou.
Thanks,
and thanks very much for coming on TZM Global today. This track is called Constellations from the band Enter Shikari.
Cheers, dude.
Packing the last few shirts into a bloated suitcase. Last glimpse of comfort and the ticking clock face. I swear those hands move faster every day. I'm more confused than ever, but I don't beg or pray, 'cause the sparkling light from the morning sun